Governor Daniel Malloy has been touring the state today. He's about to give us an update on the cleanup situation.
News 8's chief political correspondent Mark Davis live at the State Emergency Operations Center in Hartford. Mark?
Hi, Darren and Ann. Good evening, everyone, again from Hartford tonight. The governor's just wrapping up his conference call with city and town leaders, and he'll be out here shortly. I just had a conversation with the state commissioner of transportation, who told me that the state is scouring the entire country to see about some heavy equipment and bringing it in here, because clearly what we have isn't enough, especially in anticipation of the possibility of another heavy snowstorm this weekend. There are some models apparently predicting that, and that's what the DOT commissioner is concerned about, whether or not we can get even more equipment in here, although he cautions that other parts of the country don't want to give up their stuff. Here now is Governor Malloy.
Thank you for joining me this evening, and we are continuing to move resources as they become available to cities and towns across the state. Earlier today, we waived weight restrictions for heavy machinery so that we can ease the movement of that equipment and so that it can reach the places where it's most needed at this time. The Lieutenant Governor and I have traveled to a number of towns in the last few days. We know and have seen municipalities working as hard as they can. I would ask that people understand that this is an extraordinary set of events, and the people who are behind the wheel on those trucks are doing the best they can as we speak. Besides the frustration you may be feeling, please remember that they're working as hard as they can. I remain very concerned about the possibility of roof collapses. We have 16 reported collapses so far. That's up from 5 this morning. Clearly, the weight of the rain and the melting snow is having an impact. I have urged all superintendents of schools and all mayors and first selectmen to be involved in making sure that inspections are done. Just about every school building in our state built after the 50s has a flat roof. Schools are important resources. Please get somebody up on the roof. At the very least, make sure that the drains are clear and are working. We don't want a tragedy to occur at one of our school buildings or see extensive damage there. Please take the time on your own home to clear your roofs as well. And in my travels today, I saw a number of portions of houses that had been stripped away from the building as a partial collapse. We have 250 National Guard on duty. As I speak, we'll be working throughout the night in assistance to a number of the municipalities around the state. Limited Metro North service has been restored to New Haven. Full service is available from Stamford. The New Canaan and Danbury lines are working their normal schedule. Waterbury is still out. We'll know later tonight whether that will be up and operating, so people who would otherwise rely on the Waterbury line should check the website or call later tonight. We are working in collaboration with a number of states. So far, we have secured resources from both Pennsylvania and Maine. Some of those assets are here already and are being distributed to local governments. We're also getting resources from the state's utility companies who have released some of their contractors in snow plowing to us. And again, we're making those assets available to local governments. The DMV has canceled all road tests for Wednesday because of poor visibility at some street corners. It's not optimal to be testing new drivers right now. So at least as of Wednesday, that will continue to be canceled. But we are planning on opening state offices and the court system on Wednesday. Most state colleges are open as of tomorrow. Students should check the websites for their specific college or university. We do have some greater problems at a few, and they may delay opening another day. UConn will also be open at all of its branches tomorrow. A couple of things. I've traveled the highways extensively today. It is clear that people aren't going as slow as they should be. We're asking you to slow down. I saw 2 cars turned over as a result of their having come into contact with the piled up snow on the edge of the roads and then flipping over. Neither one of those particular accidents had injuries associated with it, but it ties up traffic, makes it harder for other people, and of course threatens injury. And then finally, I want to say to the local and state first responders, the firemen, the policemen, as well as the other employees who are responding to this incident. I want to thank them very much for their hard work. We're a few days into this incident. We're also looking at the possibility of additional snow later this week. I want all of those individuals to understand how much we appreciate their hard work, local and state employees. With that, I'll take a few questions.
Governor, you told us earlier today that DOT had released their contractors so that they could go to the municipalities.
Yes.
But the commissioner had told me just about an hour ago when we were arriving here that he is trying to secure heavier equipment from other parts of the country because of this looming forecast this weekend. It could be another storm as bad as the one we just had.
We are working on securing additional assets from other parts of the country, not only because of the threat of heavier weather later in the week, but just some towns are so adversely impacted. I got out to see Stratford and Bridgeport today, really badly beaten up, and I saw in one of the papers that the Bridgeport mayor thinks it's going to take the rest of the week to clear up, and I, having seen it, I don't doubt that veracity.
As a last resort, some of the snow can be dumped into waterways. I know they used to do that in the past. That was stopped. Could that be a problem, especially with salt?
The question was about we're allowing snow to be dumped into waterways. We really don't have an option, quite frankly. There is no place to put this. Towns have to satisfy us that they have filled their normal holding sites, and once they've done that, then they can use the waterways. We ask that there are a set of rules on the DEEP website. They've all been directed to those. They understand what the rules are, and we'll do the best we can, but obviously we got to clear roads.
Governor, what types and how much equipment did you get from Pennsylvania and Maine so far?
I'll ask somebody to get you that briefing either later or first thing in the morning. We put out a call. We get responses. Responses get negotiated a little bit and as to what's coming and operating. So between the TAG, the general, because some of those resources are additional National Guard resources, and some are from DOT, I'll try to pull a list. At the latest, we'll get you something tomorrow.
Governor, the state kind of went through this with the two-sword panel, thinking about hardening infrastructure and figuring out ways to cope with storms of this magnitude and the frequency that we're seeing. Do you have any advice for municipalities? Because I feel like for the first time they're kind of experiencing this too, with not having enough equipment or personnel to clear the roads.
This is going to get me in trouble, but I'm going to say it anyway. We're in a time of climate turmoil, and I think all of our thought processes around equipment and hardening of infrastructure, all of that thought process has to be done on an expedited basis. We've got to make sure that we have the resources necessary to respond to these types of incidences. Having said that, last winter we didn't have much of a winter at all after one big horrific storm in October. But, this is our fifth declaration in 2 years with respect to natural disasters. So I think everybody's got to give a lot of thought process around what type of equipment they're going to need in the future.
Do you have an idea of how many state equipment is helping local municipalities right now?
We have, between the National Guard and our state contractors, that's who we've freed up. So I asked the commissioner of the DOT to cut back on his use of those so we could make that available to municipalities. We're going to continue to clear our roads. We still have a lot of work to do on some of our secondary state highways. But that is about upwards of 400 pieces of apparatus that could be made available. Having said that, that's not 400 front-end loaders. There's about 63 of those that are being made available as we speak.
Governor, we've been informed that some cities did not follow it wasn't a directive, it was an advice, to keep plowing as these big accumulations started piling up, to keep up with it. They actually sent their people home Friday night. Maybe it was out of caution and out of safety. But do you think that's why our major cities, I mean, Hartford, even Capitol Avenue right out front here is not as wide as it ought to be? And if we have full commerce tomorrow in the city here, there's going to be a problem. Same in New Haven and Bridgeport.
There's going to be a lot of time for people to second guess themselves, and what I can tell you is that with respect to our Department of Transportation, we remained plowing throughout the storm. And I think you need to direct those questions to other folks. And maybe there were judgments that they had to make based on how much snow was falling at any time. But let me assure you, my commissioner followed my advice. We plowed throughout the storm.
Follow up on that. When the question was asked the other day, what kind of response you got from cities and towns, your answer was that there was no protest.
Right.
So obviously some towns didn't follow your advice.
I'm hearing that. I haven't been able to survey that, but I've heard the same things that you've heard.
What does that say? They said what you wanted to hear, but they didn't really follow it.
There's going to be plenty of time for people to second guess themselves on that. I gave advice. The advice was to plow throughout the storm. Subject to safety issues. They have the right to make their own decision about safety issues. I can assure you that my commissioner followed my advice.
Middletown's mayor said that they had to tow out 80 cars, and that took valuable resources away from neighborhoods that could have been plowed. I know you pay a fine for that. Should those fines be increased for people who ignore the ban?
I think we're going to have plenty of time to talk about those things once the streets in Bridgeport or Stratford or Hamden or New Haven are operational, or any of the other towns that are adversely impacted. I will tell you, I just completed a community call, local government call. Now, we had about a high of about 250 participants in those calls. We're down to about 65. That tells me that we're making progress in a lot of places, but there are places that are more adversely impacted. In some cases, because they got more snow. That's a certain reality. So we'll look at how people responded to this, and we'll try to reinforce lessons learned. I think we'll have plenty of time.
Considering the 2 carbon monoxide deaths in Meriden, can you tell us exactly, confirm for how many storm-related deaths now?
7 storm-related deaths as I came out here that we've confirmed, and Andrew can try to get you some additional information on that. That would include those 2. And then I think the woman who was hit by a car, and then some heart attack situations.
Will there be any relief that you might be able to offer for businesses that are missing days now?
That all depends on subsequent declarations that we will seek. But that requires us to survey the amount of cost associated with this storm, as well as do an analysis of physical damage. But I will say this, that when we had a particularly bad storm, and not as bad as this one, in January of 11, we received those broader declarations. I thought it was important that we get this initial declaration because I wanted communities to feel free to spend as much as they could, as quickly as they could, in getting as much progress made. And a number of the local officials are very appreciative that we got that early start. They get to pick what 48-hour period of time in which they can get their 75% reimbursement from the federal government. That's another decision we made, as opposed to designate a statewide one. So we're working with the local government on that. But I believe subsequent announcements will be made once we get our applications in.
For business losses, how does that work? Does it go right down to the guy who owns a sandwich shop?
Some of it is done through Small Business Administration. It really will depend on that. But we did experience that in Irene, for instance, and Sandy, for instance, and those kinds of declarations. And under those types of declarations, there is some additional coverage for uninsured losses.
Do you have an idea?
Cities and towns have already canceled school, but there's some that are still kind of holding out and waiting to see. What would you recommend, and is there concern that kids are missing too much?
Sure. I think there's a big concern that kids are missing too much, but public safety and children's safety has to come first. And if you can't get the children delivered safely to the school, then you have to cancel school. And that's why, listen, a couple of things. Clearing snow on city roads and town roads, that's a local issue and on a local call, and whether you're going to open school is a local call. What I would urge systems to do is to make that call as quickly as possible so that people have the appropriate warning, and to not open too early if your town roads can't handle the bus moving around. So, I know that some systems have canceled through Wednesday already as well. So that's a choice for them to make. Safety has to be the number one concern, and there better have been somebody up on the roof checking the roof. Okay.
Can you give us a flavor of the calls you just finished with municipal officials, the 65 who are still on? What kind of things are they asking you and telling you?
It's mostly about the availability of assets. This was a precipitous drop from earlier calls down to about 65 participants. It really is about assets that we can make available, or questions along the line of what do the various declarations and level of declarations mean for them. And specifically, we had a question about water dumping, and we had a question about what 48-hour period, and they were informed that they make that choice.
Governor, on the roof collapses, are they mostly commercial buildings or residential? And those are the actual collapses. But what we're seeing is a lot of damage that's starting to accumulate, trusses separating and that sort of thing. So people need to take a look at it. I think 16 is what I said when I came in. Sure, we're worried about that. For our state employees, we have a mandatory break period, but the commissioner made, I think, a very smart move and sent a bunch of people home last night to get a full night's sleep, and they started again this morning. I supported the commissioner in making that decision. We had those people on the road for a number of days with only 3-hour breaks, so I support him in that decision. I think it was the right decision to make. They're more rested now, and they're out there working very hard. I saw those big, heavy trucks and blowing machines and all that stuff out there working pretty hard today. Okay, thank you all very much.
Thank you, Governor.
Yep.
So, as of this hour, we are up to 16 building collapses in the state of Connecticut. Many of them have been empty buildings, although I know of at least one residence there in Branford was a condominium unit that had this problem that he was talking about, where the trusses separated and there was some damage, and we are told the owners got out okay and are staying somewhere else. 7 deaths is the total, and the cleanup goes on. Now, for a time today, plowing the roads had to wait while crews rushed to clear the storm drains because of the rain. Flooding became a big concern today as clogged storm drains caused deep hazards, like here on Interstate 91 in New Haven. Further up the interstate, icing forced state police to close down the highway for a time north of Hartford. Towns also unable to get to those storm drains while they are still clearing snow from side streets, like at this intersection in Branford. The good news is the state has released some of its crews to help the cities and towns. But things may not get back entirely to normal until sometime on Wednesday in some areas. Branford was one of the communities that the governor visited today, hearing firsthand about how this town of about 30,000 people is dealing with Blizzard 2013.
Fire trucks were getting stuck, and we had to dedicate the plows and the loaders to getting them out. I mean, it was quite a hassle during that storm.
And how the town is providing services to residents still stranded in their homes well beyond the normal emergencies.
We're also getting requests from people to get medications for them.
Because they can't get out and get them themselves.
Correct, and they're elderly people, and one woman needs Coumadin. It's an emergency for us, for her. So we can't deny her, and we'll take care of it. We'll get her for her.
Now, most state employees will be staying home again tomorrow because it is a state holiday. They don't normally work anyway. It's Lincoln's birthday, a state holiday here in Connecticut, February the 12th. And a reminder that the Department of Motor Vehicles is only going to be open this week on Wednesday and Thursday, and closing Friday morning at noon, and then it'll be closed up. They won't be open on Saturday, won't be open until the following Tuesday. So if you have any business to do at the Department of Motor Vehicles, I would say you better get it done Wednesday or Thursday of this week. Live from the Emergency Operations Center at the State Armory in Hartford, Mark Davis, News 8.